I met Tim back in college, and our love story felt like something out of a romance novel. His charming smile and my infectious laugh drew us together, and we quickly fell in love. After a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends and family, we settled into married life. Tim was an easygoing guy with a love for late-night snacks. I knew about this little quirk of his, but I never thought much of it. However, everything changed when I got COVID and lost my sense of smell for several weeks. During my recovery, Tim's nightly snacking became more frequent and excessive. Little did I know that his midnight feasts were about to unleash a silent yet deadly force on our marriage. As my sense of smell slowly returned, I noticed something odd lingering in the air whenever Tim was around. At first, I couldn't quite place the smell, but as my sense of smell sharpened, I realized that it was his farting, and it was no ordinary gas. The odor was so pungent, so overwhelming, that I struggled to breathe whenever Tim was nearby. It was so bad. I'm surprised the paint didn't peel from our walls. I tried to dismiss it at first, thinking maybe my senses were still adjusting, but the stench only grew stronger with each passing day. I found myself in a quandary. How could I tell my beloved husband that his farts were causing me such distress? I knew Tim was sensitive about his bodily functions in general, and didn't like discussing such personal matters. But the smell was becoming unbearable, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to find a way to address the issue without hurting my husband's feelings. One night as we sat down for dinner, I mustered up the courage to bring up the subject. I tried to be as delicate as possible, suggesting that maybe Tim should watch what he ate before bedtime. To my relief, Tim took it well, promising to make some changes to his diet. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Perhaps this was the end of our smelly ordeal. To my dismay, Tim's efforts to curb his late-night snacking were short-lived. It seemed that his love for food and his nocturnal cravings were simply too strong to resist. The disgusting farting continued, filling our home with an unbearable stench that seemed to cling to every wall and soft surface. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself struggling to cope with the situation. I tried everything from lighting scented candles to opening windows to airing out the house, but nothing seemed to work. The stench had become a constant presence, a haunting reminder of the rift that had formed between us. Sleep became a luxury for me, as I dreaded the nights when Tim's stomach would rumble and the high-pressure stream of gas would fill the room. I found myself retreating to the guest room or even sleeping on the couch, desperate for a breath of fresh air. The intimacy we once shared had been replaced by a silent war of odors, each passing gas cloud a reminder of our growing estrangement. My once happy marriage had turned into a living nightmare, with the smell of Tim's farting serving as a grotesque symbol of our disintegrating relationship. I tried to talk to Tim again, but he seemed oblivious to my distress. He brushed off my concerns, dismissing them as trivial and unimportant. The more I tried to make him understand, the more he pushed me away. In a last-ditch effort to salvage our marriage, I suggested we seek help from a therapist. I hoped that a neutral third party could help us navigate this strange and smelly chapter in our lives. But Tim refused, adamant that our problems could be solved without outside intervention. Desperate and disillusioned, I began to contemplate the unthinkable: divorce. The idea of ending my marriage over something as bizarre as farting seemed absurd, but the toll it was taking on my mental and emotional well-being was undeniable. I wondered if love could truly withstand such a foul and inescapable presence in our lives. As I grappled with the possibility of ending my marriage, I found myself reflecting on the nature of relationships and the limits of love. I realized that seemingly trivial issues could erode even the deepest, most profound connections. The stench of Tim's farting had become a metaphor for the cracks in our marriage, cracks that seemed insurmountable. One fateful night, as I lay awake in the darkness, enveloped in the suffocating smell that had come to define my marriage, I made a decision. I would confront Tim one last time, lay bare my feelings and fears, and ask him to choose, me or his late-night snacks. As the morning light filtered through the curtains, I found myself standing in front of Tim, my heart heavy with sadness and resolve. I spoke of my love for him, of our shared memories and dreams, and of the silent agony I had endured in our home. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I pleaded with him to see the profound impact his actions had on our relationship. Tim listened in silence, his face a mask of emotions. For a moment, I feared the worst, that my ultimatum had pushed him too far, that our love was no match for the toxic cloud that hung between us. But then, in a moment of clarity, Tim spoke. He apologized, his voice tinged with regret and sorrow. He admitted that he had been blind to the pain he had caused me, and that he was willing to make a change. Together, we vowed to work on our issues, to communicate openly and honestly, and to rebuild the trust and intimacy that had been lost in the fog of flatulence. He also promised to get a health checkup to rule out a medical reason for his excessive gas. So, with a better understanding and determination, we started working on fixing our problems and making things better. The noxious cloud that had threatened to engulf our love began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of hope and commitment. In the end, I learned that even the most unconventional challenges could be overcome with love, patience, and the willingness to confront difficult truths. Our love story, once tainted by the foul odor of flatulence, emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. And as we walk hand in hand into the sunset, I know that our bond is unbreakable, no matter how stinky the road ahead may be.